Bienvenidos and welcome everybody to our third LHC membership webinars program of 2025. It's incredible to think that we've hosted our first membership webinar in December of 2023, and we are so excited to continue providing a space for important conversations on Latinx heritage conservation. Today's presentation is titled From Memory to Action, Heritage Conservation as a Tool for Democracy Building. Thank you to our guests from the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience and very own Latinos and Heritage Conservation staff. Sorry, just letting a couple folks in. And thank you all for joining today as well. Just so you know, LHC members receive live access to webinars, so thank you all of our members for joining today, where you can ask presenters questions directly, as well as early access to recordings. After this presentation is done, we'll send you an email of the recording. So if you miss any part of it, be sure that we're going to send that over to you. And finally, all of our membership webinar presentations are posted publicly on our website 7 days after the presentation. So a week from today, visit our website to see today's presentation and all of our past recordings as well. And for those of you who are not members and maybe watching the recording, we invite you to join LHC. Our new membership levels this year include yearly and monthly payment plans. We have all types of benefits, including our quarterly newsletter, live access to membership webinars like today's program, and our monthly Cafecitos con LHC, a login for our La Plaza online forum, and much, much more. And we also have a community supporter level. This is a membership which includes all those benefits, plus extra La Plaza logins and webinar attendees, custom presentations, and these are great giving levels for corporations and orgs. So please consider a donation to help us continue this important work, que vale la pena. If you're already a member, thank you for your continued support, and we appreciate you spreading the word about LHC and the amazing things that we do together. With that, thank you again, everyone, for joining, and I'll pass it over to our guests from the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience to go and introduce yourselves. And if you give me 1 second, I'll pull up your presentation.
Sure, thank you.
Sharing screen. Make sure everyone can see that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Hola, buenos días. My name is Silvia Fernandez, and I am a program director at the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience. We go by either ICSC or the coalition. It's a pleasure to be here today and have the possibility to meet new voices and new initiatives. Thank you to the Latinos in Heritage Conservation for inviting us. I am also joined by my colleague, Elena Del Hoyo, also coming from Spain. And today we will be sharing some key reflections on how heritage conservation can play a powerful role in building and safeguarding democracy. I guess let's start the question. We wanted to sort of like frame the presentation, and I guess the most important question is, why are we having this conversation today? I guess it's no news that we are living in a moment of rising authoritarianism, disinformation, and cultural polarization. Around the world, we see political elites manipulating truth, silencing dissent, and marginalizing or erasing alternative narratives. Differences are implicitly met with hostility, and our civic spaces continue to shrink. In this climate, we as cultural institutions, heritage sites, and grassroots organizations face enormous challenges. And because heritage is fundamentally about memory, identity, and belonging, heritage also becomes a battleground. However, and here is where the opportunity lies and our presentation focuses on, heritage can also be a bridge in this climate. When used intentionally, heritage can reconstruct fractured identities, provide platforms for truth and justice, foster empathy across communities, and strengthen democratic values. It is in this conjunction that activating heritage sites, and cultural spaces become a vital strategy for safeguarding democracy. At the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience, we see heritage conservation not only as a way of remembering the past, but as a fundamental pillar for democracy building today. Heritage sites can also serve as safeguards against disinformation and political manipulation. They are trusted spaces where communities can confront difficult truths, survivors and descendants can speak, new generations can learn, and societies can confront the root causes of conflict and the values and institutions needed to prevent them. And this is why site of conscience, and we will go now and explain what a site of conscience is, but site of conscience and like-minded organizations are so important today. They preserve and critically examine narratives, challenge dominant systems of oppression, and equip communities with the tools to defend democratic values. And lastly, none of us, as actually we were talking to Hillary before the session, none of us can do this alone. And I guess this is the power of the community and really why we are here today. In these times of poly-crisis where multiple crises emerge and amplify one another, collaboration and solidarity are crucial. By working across disciplines and borders, we can transform heritage into a living force for justice, democracy, and human dignity. During today's session, we will draw on our work at the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience to explore how heritage conservation can serve as a tool for democracy building, how protecting and celebrating our cultural legacies can strengthen civic engagement, promote accountability, and help communities envision a shared future. So Renee, if you can go to the next slide so we can actually get into who we are. Oh, sorry, this slide was key points from the presentation the introduction, but we can move on to the next, please.
Thank you so much. So I will take it from here. I am Elena, and I will provide you a bit of context. On our side, the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience is the only global network of historic sites, museums, libraries, archives, and memory initiatives working together to connect past struggles to today's movements for human rights and social justice. It was founded in 1999 by 7 leaders from different museums and heritage sites, and the coalition today is constituted by over 400 members in 80 countries. Our membership is incredibly diverse, from victim-based grassroots organizations to national museums and memorials, and coalition members differ in type and size, the stories they remember, their trajectories, and their context. And together we shape the Sites of Conscience movement around the world. If we can go to the next slide, please. But what is a Sites of Conscience? A Site of Conscience is a site of memory that goes beyond remembrance to repair the past by shedding light on past injustices and supporting victims and survivors in their search for truth and justice, ensure never again by preserving memory and raising awareness to prevent future recurrence, contribute to inclusive societies by building inclusive and complex narratives, both about the past but also the present, integrating marginalized voices and combating stereotypes and discrimination, and foster democracy and social cohesion by fostering critical thinking and dialogue on the pressing issues raised at the site and invite the public to take positive action. What Sites of Conscience do is activate the power of places of memory to preserve memory, promote truth, and pursue justice, which is our ethos. If we can go to the next slide, please. And here are some examples of how these principles I just mentioned fall into action. These are photos from the National Indigenous Residential School Museum in Canada and located in Manitoba. And the museum preserves the history of the residential school system that forcibly assimilated Indigenous children. As a site of conscience, the museum serves as a space for remembrance, education, and reconciliation, honoring survivors, their history, their knowledge, and their language. Next slide, please. Here we have the Winlook Museum of the Asian Pacific American Experience, located in Seattle, and it tells the story of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. Through community-driven exhibitions and programs, the museum preserves cultural heritage and strengthens Pan-Asia Pacific American community while addressing contemporary forms of discrimination. And the next slide. And this is the Museum of Abandonment. It's a digital and participatory museum engaging survivors in Romania and in the diaspora, dedicated to documenting the story and impact of child abandonment and institutionalization in Romania. It was founded in 2021 and it serves as a space for public engagement, remembrance, and healing, giving visibility to a collective trauma that has long shaped Romanian society. You can go to the next slide. Silvia.
Yeah. So our approach to leveraging heritage for democracy building is rooted basically in these bullets laid out here: intentional inclusivity, community empowerment, conscious activation, and collaboration. When referring to inclusivity, the baseline is that heritage is never neutral. The stories that we choose to preserve, interpret, and share are shaped by our backgrounds and social, cultural, and political environments. So here we have a big responsibility, because as museums, archives, and heritage sites, and as repositories of cultural and historical knowledge, we shape how people understand the world through our collections and interpretations. These representations can either reinforce existing power structures or challenge them. They can perpetuate injustice or create spaces for truth-telling, healing, and accountability. At ICSC, we believe in building inclusive narratives as catalysts for social change. For us, inclusivity means broadening official narratives or historical narratives to include the experiences of communities that have long been silenced or marginalized, and doing so with intentionality. So intentional inclusivity requires us to recognize, as mentioned earlier, that every curatorial decision, from what stories to tell, what to display, or how to describe it, it is inherently political. And that these choices can either reinforce inequality or advance truth-telling, pluralism, and accountability. By consciously centering excluded voices, heritage sites can become plural spaces for dialogue, recognition, and justice, just as democratic society should be. So in a way, they can function as a mirror of a healthy democracy. To support our members and like-minded organizations to carry out this work, in 2022, we developed the Correcting the Record methodology, our roadmap to guide site of conscience in a deep and honest self-assessment to determine gaps in community representation in their practices, approaches, and collections. Elena, I don't know if you can share the link, maybe of the toolkit that we develop. In terms of empowerment, the baseline is that democracy requires active participation, and that heritage can serve as a powerful platform for empowering communities and promoting civic engagement. At ICSC, empowerment, or for us, empowerment means shifting from doing heritage conservation about communities to doing heritage conservation with communities. It involves inviting communities to contribute their lived experience, co-create interpretations, and share ownership in shaping new cultural narratives. The result is a richer narrative, deeper relationships, and a stronger civic trust and engagement. Throughout our experience, we have also observed how these partnerships can lead to meaningful changes in how collections are presented, how visitors engage with difficult histories, and even how institutions define their missions. Empowerment transform heritage sites and initiatives into democratic spaces where communities see themselves both as authors and guardians of their cultural memory. When it comes to activation, at the core of the Site of Conscience movement is the understanding that there is nothing inherent in a historic site, a museum, or a heritage site that ensures public engagement or draws connections between its past and its contemporary legacies. On the contrary, heritage and memory needs to be intentionally activated through a process of programming and interpretation in order to promote civic engagement and the respect for human rights. Site of Conscience, they rooted in their local communities, so they turn to their own cultural traditions to develop tools and programs specific to their context, whether it's theater, visual arts, music, exhibition design, dance, to activate their potential within society. And finally, democracy building, as we've been saying, democracy building cannot be pursued in isolation. Collaboration and solidarity recognize that heritage institutions, civil society, and communities must work together across disciplines and across borders and regions. Partnerships, and we've learned this through our own work, as a network of over 400 members, partnerships amplify impact, create shared learning, and build collective resilience against threats to democracy. By working in alliance, heritage practitioners and communities transform heritage conservation and memory work into a movement for justice. Elena and I will present now a couple of examples of how two sites of conscience are activating heritage under the umbrella of Site of Conscience. Renee, could you go on to the next slide, please? So the first example is la ESMA, la Escuela Mecánica de la Armada, in Buenos Aires, Argentina. It used to be one of the main clandestine detention and torture centers during the Argentinian military dictatorship between the 1976 and 1983. Today, it serves both as a site of memory. It has become a museum, and also as a site of conscience dedicated to human rights and democracy education and to preserving the memory of state terrorism through the testimony of survivors. ESMA preserves not only its tangible heritage, so the buildings, but the life experiences of all those detained and murdered. So their intangible heritage, memories, stories, and lessons that remain vital today in Argentinian society. In 2023, ESMA became part of the UNESCO World Heritage List, underscoring its global significance. As you may know, a site achieves outstanding universal value, not just for what happened there, but for its cultural and human importance that transcends national boundaries and speaks to the present and future generations. In ESMA's case, this value comes from not only the tragic events of the past, but from how the site has been activated today to promote democracy, foster dialogue, and ensure justice. ESMA serves as a living space for truth-telling, accountability, and civic engagement. Visitors engage directly with history through survivor testimonies, educational programs, exhibitions, and commemorations connecting the history that the site remembers with contemporary struggles for human rights and democratic governance. This site really embodies the principle that heritage is not only about remembering the past, but about building the civic, social, and ethical foundations needed to prevent repetition of injustice. Elena, I let you go to the next one.
Thank you. So this is the Museu do Samba. The Museu do Samba in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil, is a community museum located in the heart of Mangueira, which is one of the most traditional strongholds of Carioca Samba. The museum was born as the Cartola Cultural Center, founded in 2001 by the grandchildren of Cartola and Dona Zica, who were leaders of the community where the institution stands nowadays. And the museum not only highlights the importance of samba, recognized as intangible cultural heritage of humanity and presented to the public, but also serves as a place of memory, preservation, and representation of its origins in Afro-Brazilian culture. It is also a space for reflection on the legacies of the transatlantic slave trade and the Black diaspora. And a bit of context, after the United States, Brazil received the largest number of enslaved Africans during the transatlantic slave trade, around 40% of the total. And the consequences and legacies of racism and colonialism remain visible today in Brazil's persistent social inequalities and dominant narratives. Through samba, its music, instruments, objects, lived stories, drawings, and more, this museum addresses Afro-Brazilian cultural legacies, showing how they have shaped Brazilian identity and how samba has served as a space of community, resistance, and resilience and dignity for Afro-descendant communities. The museum also pays special attention to women's narratives, often overlooked within traditional male-dominated spaces, music in this case. With an immersive museum experience centered on music and a collection of more of 45,000 pieces, the museum also spearheaded the International Meeting on Samba, Black Heritage, and the Diaspora, a forum that explored themes such as slavery, post-colonial societies, decolonization, reparations, the history of racism, Black memory sites, and Afro-diasporic cultures. In their own words, the Museo do Samba is a space of resistance in the preservation of our fundamental cultural identity. If we can go to the next slide. No, sorry. That's not. Yeah.
Yes, I guess this is it. Thank you. This was yes, hopefully this inspired some thinking that we can exchange, or we can discuss, or we can share now. But thank you.
Muchísimas gracias for your presentation. And yes, we're going to do a Q&A at the very end, but of course, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Give me 1 second as I pull up our next presenter slide, which is Hillary, our very own LHC, Hillary Morales Robles. Hillary, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Well, buenos dias, everyone. My name is Hilary Morales Robles. I am the History Preservation Officer, and I'll be presenting to you today the Endangered Latinx Landmarks Program. I think this is one of many beautiful programs that LAC is leading this year. And I'm very proud that I have been able to lead this effort alongside our wonderful team of experts. I think in relation to the topic of our conversation today, one of the unique aspects of this program is that it's a nomination-based advocacy program that is very critical in how we look at heritage sites in the context of the U.S., particularly in these times where our communities are experiencing different types of vulnerabilities that are essential to use heritage as a tool for building coalition and connect within our cultura. Next slide. So this is a recap. I know our members should know this by heart at this point, but it's always good to give us a reminder of what is our mission. Oh. Our LAC mission is to build a movement that affirms Latinx heritage through education, conservation, and leadership development. Latinos in Heritage Conservation was co-founded in 2014 by a generational group of heritage practitioners, advocates, scholars, and students interested in building a national network to support Latinx preservation efforts across the country. Next slide. So coincidentally, the tagline of the program is Herencia is more than a memory. And it's because, particularly with Latino heritage, we are very strong in oral heritage and oral history. Like our grandmas are the carriers of the knowledge, but those stories are beyond memory. There are places, there are tangible spaces. So thinking critically how to connect storytelling with our advocacy campaigns in order to preserve places and also ultimately create policies that protect our communities, it is critical for us to keep this as a reminder. Next slide. Okay, so a quick overview of the program's overview is that the Indigenous Latinx Landmarks program is dedicated to identify, prioritize, and protect Latinx heritage sites across the United States that are under immediate threat. One of the many threats categories that we are experiencing during our research and also in our collaboration with the communities is dangers such as demolition, gentrification or displacement, neglect, tourism, and the effects of climate change. Through this initiative, LHC aims to rally communities and gather public attention and resources to safeguard these vital landmarks, ensuring the Latinx heritage is recognized and preserved as a fundamental part of our nation's shared history. And next slide. So since the start of the preservation movement in the United States, communities of color have largely been minoritized. This exclusion and erasure from the nation's narrative underscores the need for the present research to examine the progress made towards greater inclusion since the launch of the National Park Service, American Latinos, and the Making of the United States, a theme study that was made in 2011. This involves identifying best practices, addressing ongoing gaps in the representation of Latinx communities in the National Register of Historic Places, the air quote, official list of the nation's history sites deemed worthy of preservation, end quote. The relevance of this research persists today as efforts to reduce funding and further marginalize these narratives have gained renewed momentum at the federal level. As part of LAC efforts to do this is that we have the equity study that was began by our wonderful executive director, Sila Mota Casper, back in 2011, where we were able to get a fellow, her name is Allison, that this year she was able to identify that since 2008, we had a representation of less of 0.1% in the National Register, and since and looking now at 2025, we only have increased up to 0.65%. So it's still less than 1% of the National Register, knowingly that Latino has been present in this country and this land way before the concept of a nation state. So part of the goals of the Endangered Landmarks program is to be able to do site identification, but also ultimately close this gap to increase our the protection of the sites. Next slide. The results of the mapping study that was done by our beautiful fellow results show that the majority of the identified sites elevating Latinx history reside majority in Puerto Rico, because we are one of the oldest colonies in the world. We have also the state of California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, and Florida. And we know this because of the presence of before the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty, these were states that belong to Mexico. And Florida, of course, it has become a large migration hub from the South America and Latin America to the United States. So these key reasons, the key reasons stating that of the presence of the sites stated by partners was that funding for staff and resources to conduct proper outreach was the biggest obstacle. So there's a huge need to continue identifying and protecting places across the United States. Next slide. So one of the many objectives that the Endangered Program has is, of course, uplift of representing Latinx heritage, raise awareness and urgency around threats. We know that Latino communities experience very unique threats within the U.S. context, like looking at displacement, like even now with raids. So thinking about militarization, things like that, they're pretty unique in the context of the Latinx heritage that we cannot overlook. Also support the site stewards with visibility preservation tools. That's something that we resonate, of course, with Elena and Silvia, how important it is. It's not our work. We are, of course, we are like in many ways the mediator in many cases. Our goal ultimately is to do coalition building, because without the community, we cannot do this work. Our role is to connect people in the grounds and provide the resources they need in order to achieve the ultimate goal, which is preservation. And lastly is to build a network of advocates and placekeepers. So one thing we're doing is to connect with local grassroots preservation organizations that have the knowledge of the preservation language, and being able to connect with local communities and advocacy campaigns, fundraising, etc. And next slide. So why LAC is different? One thing I did at the beginning of this development, this program, is to, of course, do research. These endangered listings are not new. These exist since the 80s, a part of the environmental movement. It started first with the endangered species, and then translated into the preservation movement. And so when I was looking at this type of programming, how we can be different, or what can we do better given that we have the resources. So one thing we are critical about this thing is not a contest. We didn't call it most in danger. Like there's different ways that we can look at threats and endangerment. So for us, we want to make sure that within our language, we're trying to compete about who has the most vulnerability, because there are different ways to look at endangerment sites. Also, not letting fear get in the way of good. A lot of the issues that our communities are facing currently is a lot of fear. So we didn't want to add an extra layer. We want to empower them. We want to be able to create the stage for their voice to be heard. So that was very key in our messaging. And lastly, of course, language inclusivity. A lot of our elders don't speak English, so we needed to be able to create accessible tools for our communities to be able to have access, and also deconstructing the language of preservation in a more familiar way. Next slide. So this is the list. Welcome to the 13 sites list. So one thing to note about, as I mentioned, the 2025 Endangered Landmarks list cycle of our nomination-based advocacy program features 13 Latinx historic sites that faces major threats. So I'm gonna mention them because, of course, we have to mention them. So one is Anita's Street Market in Tucson, Arizona. Grand Performance Mural in Oakland, California. The Maxa Youth Center in San Jose, California. Los Murales de la Calle 24 in San Francisco, California. The Civil Platter Bar in LA, California. Las Barracas in Longmont, Colorado. Plaza del Cerro in Chimayo, New Mexico. Unity Mural in Washington, D.C. Our Lady of Guadalupe Vietnam Veterans Memorial Mural in Chicago, Illinois. San Felipe del Neri Parish House in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Barrio Chihuahuita in El Paso, Texas. El Sagrado Corazón de la Iglesia de Jesús in Ruidosa, Texas. And Elgin Mexican Cemetery in Elgin, Texas. So all these sites, while they look small, it is big significant number for us, because it's we were able to experience a range and diversity in terms of site typology and the stories are preserved, from abandoned Mexican cemeteries, from Mexican Revolution era, all the way to LGBTQ bars in LA, to murals, Chicano murals. So we have identified the vast variety of sites that we need, the needs of protection, and also looking at creating innovative ways to protect sites of this type. Also, one key finding that we had is that our oldest site on our list is dating back 1730, okay, 18th century. And our youngest is 1995. And this means that even we have centuries old of heritage that is untold, that remains unknown. So we need to continue this effort to close this gap, to keep identifying and protecting these places. Next slide. So one example, because every site deserves its own webinar and we don't have the time. So I'm gonna bring up one of them. The Maxa Youth Center is built in 1995 in East San Jose for Latinx youth. Featured postmodern design significant to its powerful yet playful symbolism, blending postmodern and pre-Columbian influences on a grand civic scale. After its closure in 2015, it deteriorated and faced vandalism. In 2024, demolition was postponed until at least August 2025. You guessed right, that was last month, to allow community preservation efforts. However, in the early morning of August 29th, thinking about the timeline, y'all, August 29th of 2025, 3 alarm fires severely damaged the building. While the damage is extensive, early assessments indicate that significant portions may still be intact, including the gymnasium and the iconic main entrance. The Si Se Puede Collective, along with the School of Arts and Culture and Somos Mayfair, is now calling on the Allen Brock Union School District to protect the surviving elements to commit to reconstruction. The Preservation Action Council San Jose strongly supports this position as community partners continue to advocate for the center's restoration and repurposing into a multi-use community asset for East San Jose residents. Quote, what the fire destroyed can be rebuilt, but endures its Max's symbolic power and its legacy in honoring and elevating the community it serves. By safeguarding Max's at this critical moment in our nation's history, we ensure that the struggles and dreams of the Chicano Latino community remains visible, rooted in Mayfair, and the future generations of youth leaders are inspired to continue the fight for justice and dignity, end quote, by Victor Vasquez, co-executive director of Somos Mayfair. So this happened like less of a month ago. And this type of programming has allowed them to create a space to promote and advocate for the safety of the protection of this critical landmark, that it goes beyond the building. It's about community spaces, the critical programming that is needed to stay within their own communities. So advocacy and democracy, thinking of democracy building and preservation is as a tool to keep expanding our understanding of heritage within our own culture. So please keep supporting this campaign among the other 12 sites. Next slide. So one thing we did, and I'm like calling on my beautiful GIS project manager, Karina, is in the chat. One key resource that is helping us to continuously identify sites is the Latinx Roots Tracker. This is brand new, but our goal is to keep expanding this research. And one thing I want to share about these is that the Latinx Roots Tracker is an interactive public map that monitors Latinx heritage sites nationwide, accessible on our main website at latinoheritage.us. It allows users to explore, filter, and learn about sites in 3 preservation status categories. Next slide. The tracker displays routes en alerta or in danger, places that are facing urgent threats to their preservation, routes rescatadas or the safe category, sites that are actively protected, successfully restored, or reclaimed through community efforts. And lastly, routes perdidas or lost sites, Latinx landmarks that have been lost to demolition, displacement, or irreversibly altered. This tracker provides a dynamic view of our cultural landscape, helping communities, researchers, and the public visualize both the breadth of Latinx heritage and the urgency to its preservation. So feel free to take a look. We're gonna be continuously expanding the research and also making it more accessible to the public so they can input their own words and pictures and all that jazz. But yeah, this has become a critical tool that for our endangered sites this year, as well as the sites that are on the safe category and the watch list. Next slide. So I think I want to end this by thanking every community champion, because without all these people behind in the grants doing this work, we cannot do this. So arriba la herencia. And thank you, everyone. Awesome.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you to our presenters for their presentation, their wisdom, their time, your community-focused work. All of it is amazing. Friendly reminder to everybody in our chat, feel free to put in questions. We are now at our Q&A, and we have plenty of time to talk about some of these issues and the work that we're doing together. I guess I'll go ahead and start it with a question. I love that both of you Francisco. Francisco, if you want to
Hola,
come on,
Francisco. Hello.
you can unmute yourself and you're welcome to ask. Preguntar.
Sigue, Remy.
Okay,
Just
no,
continue.
okay. Well, I was gonna ask, in both of your presentations, you talked about testimonios and how they interact with places. I guess I want to ask, the importance of that testimonial in your work. I'll go ahead and ask Sylvia and Elena first.
So, I mean, for us, and I guess, from what we heard from Hilary, I'm assuming it's the same. I mean, testimonies are the voices of the community and the survivors, and they are the drivers of the work that we do. So basically, they are the epicenter of any kind of programming, preservation, any kind of like work that we do around memory and site preservation. We usually, now we have expanded. We were funded under the name is Site of Conscience. So we place a big role on the place in itself and the role that place plays in preserving and making connections, sparking empathy. That's why it's Site of Conscience. And at that point, now we have evolved. And as Selena was saying in her presentation, we no longer have historic sites or physical spaces, but we also work with memory initiatives. But anyway, back in the day, or still sort of like the legacy is that we have initiatives coming to us and getting very concerned about wanting to build a museum and what to do with a physical space, and sort of like, what if we don't have access to the space? And we always say the process is the important thing here. And the process means documenting, collecting, involving the community, building the support, drafting a collective vision of what that memory initiative is going to look like. So, going back to your question, Renee, testimonials are basically, the voices that drive all these processes. So for us are key. Elena, I don't know if you want to add.
No, I think Sylvia covered everything. Everything we do is to center and amplify those voices, even in context where authorities and victims or survivors might have like different angles or visions on what to do with a site. We always try to center everything around like it's their story, so it's their power, and we are here to amplify that.
I resonate with you both. One thing that we are doing also is we do have the Abuelas project too. There's more oral history captures from our community elders to business owners, etc. Like all our programs are interconnected in some way or the other. But one thing that the Latinx Roots Tracker is doing is also capturing the lost sites. And the reason why I really thought about this category critically was way before we start capturing endangered sites. we knew that if the number of the safe sites was still under 1% of protected and designated sites in the US, it also means that so many sites are lost. And how we gonna be able to first like know where are these places are no longer exist, but also how we can find creative ways to preserve those stories or memories. So for us, we have found that oral histories is very pivotal in our work to be able to, you know, capture generations worth of memory, but also artifacts like photos, like most likely they have photos, or like, let's say if it's a business, do we have a receipt, or do we have a photo of when it was built? So our archiving is so important too, in like creating collections of artifacts that can tell the story. Something that we would love to do in the future, hopefully in the next 3 years, is to also create virtual experiences that we can reconstruct those spaces and be able to have, you know, it's not, hopefully can be as accurate as we envision, but at the same time, it allows us to reimagine these spaces and how important it is to tell the stories and create this three-dimensional experiences that allow us to feel at a place that no longer exists. So it's just being finding creative solutions in how their technology can also help us to communicate the stories that are gone. So, but yeah, testimonials are key.
Sorry,
Well,
Rene, I was just gonna
um,
add, Hilary's response made me think that we haven't even talked about the importance of testimonies, you know, in dealing with disinformation, erasure, you know, accountability and justice. You know, that's even a completely different sort of like realm of work. So yes, testimonies are crucial.
Hillary, I don't know if you saw Francisco's pregunta.
Me ver.
Oh, Francisco, si quieres, you can.
Is it, yeah, you like to ask a question, Francisco?
Sure. I believe it's the National Trust for Historic Preservation that has I guess it's the 11 most endangered. So I'm wondering if, because I mean, eventually, Hillary, if this picks up, you might even have 35 buildings. So I'm wondering if in the future you would like to cap it. I mean, it's good, it's for the good of you guys. And at the same time, also make it a bit more competitive when it comes to the endangered sites. So 13, doable. Yes, 15. But once you start getting up there, which is great because you're getting more publicity, but at the same time, it can be a burden on you guys and your resources. But at the same time, it gives the people a little bit more of competitiveness when it comes to and having them be more competitive when it comes to selecting and sending in their information that is required for you guys to make life easier on you guys.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. We were really critical about not adding a cap for many reasons. I think one thing, first of all, this was the first year, so we're learning. But you know, the 11 most was the first list endangered listing from a national standpoint. What makes it also unique is that we're dedicating fully this list to Latino heritage sites. You know, the National Trust has done incredible work in capturing the diverse stories of the U.S., but sometimes you just get one story feature. And we know that, you know, looking back at the equity study, there needs to be more space for us to be able to tell a more comprehensive story of our cultures. You know, they had different ethnical groups, intersectional identities with Afro-American or Asian Pacific Islander. We do have really interesting stories that are cross-cultural, and I think having LAC to be able to have a fully dedicated listing and for Latino heritage allows us to expand and tell the diverse story within our community. So that's one thing. The reason that we're not capping it, and that was very critical about this, is because we don't want the community to feel like, oh, they're not gonna choose me because to only have 11, I don't think my story is that important. So that's the reason why we didn't want to put a number. Of course, it's true. We are a little team, a small little team, but we are gonna I'm positive we're gonna find creative ways to involve the community more in our nomination process so we can feature more numbers. For now, what we decided to do is to have the watch list. The watch list allows us to bring the stories still, like they're in danger still. They're in the lower end, meaning that in comparison to those that we decided to feature. But at the same time, we know that they might be in danger in a month, and we might need to pivot. So the watch list allows us to keep monitoring the sites alongside with the partners that we're supporting behind the scenes. But yeah, the watch list is our temporary solution for be able to cap. But yeah, we have 26 sites, so I wanted to put all of them, but listen, I'm one person. So we just it's in any challenge we face, we start creating creative solutions and working with alongside communities so we can make these stories getting out there. Like for example, the Maxaju Center, like it's so beautiful when communities in the process, because we were able to create the whole messaging, promotion, everything in 3 days after the fire happened. If it was an LAC, a long effort, it would have probably taken a whole month, but when we involve the community in the process is when things can mobilize and be organized and their speed that they need to be supported. So I hope to answer your question.
Yeah. And a question for, or a comment maybe for Silvia and Elena. Bienvenidas. I do belong to a group. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called FI, Patrimonio Histórico Cultural Iberoamericano. That started in, I believe it was 2008 by people or academics from the Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, and it's a network that expands through the Americas. They included the US, or at least the Southwest, since we were part of Mexico at one time. And so I am the executive member or of the US Fee Network. There's going to be an annual meeting coming up in Brazil in October. So we're going to see a lot of people coming together. So it's throughout the Americas, and it's basically more of an academic network, but we work a lot with students as well. So students' projects and work when it comes to adaptive reuse, when it comes to preservation, documentation, research, archaeology, social cultural studies, anything that deals with our heritage or our common heritage is important. So Portugal as well, Brazil, Portuguese-speaking countries, anywhere where Spain actually had a footprint that was laid on this part of the world. So we meet at least once a year. If it's not in person, we usually do it virtually. I've had meetings here in the past during the pandemic, so just wanted to throw that out to you that there is an effort on the academic side to really bring heritage together from all backgrounds. Oh, and then one last thing for Hillary or for LHC is the National Register sites. Are you also considering, say, a lot of the mission churches here in New Mexico? There's many of those that should be considered, and especially in the Southwest, there's so many National Register sites that have been here for quite immemorial, way before the Americans invaded Mexican territory. So there's a lot of significant sites throughout this region as well, especially in Nuevo Mexico, California as well. So just make sure you consider all those that have been here for, quite time immemorial. So just, remember that.
Yeah, we do talk about this all the time. Trina, would you like to say something? I think I saw you
Oh,
muted.
I was gonna say, Francisco, if you can add the link of the network you mentioned in the chat, for our guests and also for the rest of the chat as well. Ándale.
Yeah, so my answer to the question, I mean, to your comment, Francisco. So one thing we know is that the US, when we think about Latino heritage so far, what is being protected heavily has been Spanish colonial era architecture. And we have been pigeonholed, and even in the National Register. So one of the key efforts for us at this time is to tell the untold stories of the borderlands. And that's one of our biggest campaigns for the next 3 years, is to keep expanding the stories of the borderlands, departing from the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty era. And we are finding a lot of interesting, I think one thing to understand is also how important it is to tell the multi-layer and complex stories around the sites in the Southwest. And also like sites that are not often recognized in the National Register, like looking at abandoned Mexican cemeteries, to murals. Like murals is a new, in many ways, it's new within preservation, because most of these murals were painted in the 1970s. So it just started to be considered historic. So it has become, in many ways, a creative new things that we need to address within our own priority list. Also thinking about legacy businesses, our mom and pop shops, our main streets. So there's so many things to do, Francisco. I promise we're thinking about this. I promise. But yeah, so it's just centuries old of heritage. So we just need more people to help. So I will be encouraging all of you to collaborate with us. It also with Elena and Silvia, and keep telling the stories, because we cannot do this alone.
The other thing, Hillary, is we also have state registers as well that are very important, because sometimes supposedly, I mean, these buildings or heritage sites are not, I guess, nationally important. I mean, they are for us, but not for everybody. So one last thing that I just wanted to mention, whenever we load anything, when it comes to endangered buildings and structures and sites, I'm wondering if they could also list if they're who owns them, because in some cases there's a lot of funds out there that could assist, especially if they're non-religious or religious, nonprofits, trusts, privately owned, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we could also assist them in sending this information out to them, because there is money out there that could be used even through the National Trust for Historic Preservation, small grants, but or federal funds, state funds. So it just depends. Foundations as well. But that I believe is quite important when it comes to, especially in this country where there's funds, but you need to know where to go get them.
100%. Yeah, that's actually something that we're capturing in the tracker. We include parcel ID, and deed information. We just create the link. We don't put their names because, again, ownership changes night and day in this country. So by just connecting it to the city planning department, it helps. So it's in the tracker, actually. Every site has the parcel ID.
So as we wrap up on the presentation, we hit the hour. Thank you for your question. And reminder, if you can share that link. Just wanted to ask Sylvia and Elena, how can we find out more about ICSC? And how, if we know communities who are looking for support, how can they connect with you?
So Rene, you have our email addresses. I guess that's the most direct and personal way of connecting. And then, of course, via our website. But I will say, feel free to put us in contact.
Okay, and I see the link by Francisco in the chat. So I guess con eso, thank you so much for this incredible conversation. We have a lot of work to do, and thank you so much for your continued work for orgs, for our community, for centering the folks that really need that help. The conversation continues, and so does the work as well. So con eso, thank you so much for our members for joining. This presentation was recorded, and you'll get early access in the link. If you missed anything, you'll see everything, and we will publish this publicly in a week, in 7 days. Con eso, muchísimas gracias from LHC. Thank you again.
Gracias,
Gracias.
René. Hasta luego.
Muchas
Adiós.
gracias. Adiós. Chao.